name is Gloria and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my top books of the year. It's technically a top 10 list, but they're not ranked 1 through 10. They're just 10 favorite books, and I sort of categorize them by genre. I'm also going to include some stats. I was thinking about doing a separate stat video, but I figured it'd make more sense to put it all together. In total, I read/listened to 71 books this year, which is crazy for me. I know it's not crazy on BookTube because people are reading books in the hundreds, but it's crazy for me because I really got into reading this year and read a bit in years past, but definitely not to this level. And I surpassed my Goodreads goal many times in the year, so I kept pushing it up. I think for next year my goal is going to be 75, even though I think I'll be able to make that easily. I don't want to overdo it or just read to reach a number. I just want to enjoy reading. So yeah, of those 71 books, 48 were fiction and 23 were nonfiction, which is a little bit surprising for me of how much nonfiction I've read and enjoyed this year, and I'm really proud of that, and I want to make sure I continue that into 2021 and read even more nonfiction. Some random stats for you is my average page count was 370, and actually my average rating was 3.7 stars. My biggest genre was 17 books of historical fiction, 16 books that are mystery, thriller, suspense, crime, 9 literary fiction/contemporary, 8 memoirs, 14 fantasy, and only because I read all of the Harry Potters this year. So if you take that away, it's 7 fantasy books. I listened to 37 audiobooks and approximately listened to 350 hours of audiobooks. Now that the stats are out of the way, let's get into the books. I'll start with historical fiction, which is my favorite genre, and I think out of my list of 10 books, these are definitely at least in the top 5. I'll start with City of Thieves by David Benioff. This is a World War II historical fiction, although it's loosely based on a true-ish story of David Benioff's grandfather. This is set during World War II in St. Petersburg, Russia. This follows 2 teenage boys who are on a quest to find 24 eggs on an order from the Russian command officer. And this short book follows this adventure. It's very gripping. It's sad. I will say as a warning, there's some language in here and some crude teenage boy humor, but I feel like that's very fitting for the way this book was written and for the story and for the characters and what they're going through. And I'm a sucker for short chapters. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend, if you're at all interested in World War II historical fiction or books set in Russia, this one is a winner. Up next, I have Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I read all of Ruta Sepetys' books this year and I absolutely love them all. She's technically a young adult historical fiction author, so even though young adult isn't my exact forte in reading taste, I really loved this story. And actually all of her books were really good, but this one was a favorite. This book is set in East Prussia in Nazi-occupied Europe. The area is being surrounded by the Russian army and evacuation orders are set for everyone to leave the area and make their way to the coast towards the Baltic Sea to get to safety and get on a ship. And this book follows 4 different teenagers and their perspectives, and eventually their stories intertwine. And this book felt a little bit Titanic-esque in a sense that it feels intense and heartbreaking and hopeless. It also has very short chapters, and it's also one of those books that sucks you in and you want to read it in one sitting. Another reason why I love Ruta Sepetys' writing and the story in particular is because it's based off of really intense research that she does, and she notes that all in the back of the book of all of the research that she did in order to bring this story to life. And this is very much based on the real ship that did sink and all of the people that lost their lives. So that's why this book was even maybe more impactful for me, is because it did happen in real life. Obviously not as dramatic as probably this book is written, but still. So absolutely love this one. Up next, I have Buried Beneath the Baobab Tree by Adobe Trisha Nwabani. This is technically historical fiction, although it's very much based on true events, and also the last portion of the book is the true events that happened in history. This book tells the story of the girls that were kidnapped in Nigeria by the Boko Haram, which is an Islamic terrorist group. The book is really short and it's written almost as diary entries from the perspective of one of the girls who was kidnapped. It's such an incredible read and I highly recommend it. I was very sad that I didn't know about this event in history, and it's definitely one of my flaws is that I don't read the news enough. So I need to be better at that, but I think this is one of the books that most stuck with me. It's absolutely tragic, but I will say trigger warning on obviously like kidnapping and rape and abuse and torture and just terrible stuff that was happening to young girls. Up next, I have my favorite thriller, No Exit by Taylor Adams. Super fast-paced, very intense, and I've realized I love those kinds of thrillers. This book follows a girl who's in college who's on her way during Christmas break to visit her mom, and she's driving at night and gets stuck in a snowstorm and has to pull over in a rest area. She sees in a van outside this rest area that there is a girl kidnapped inside of this van. So she goes into this rest area and realizes there's only 4 people in there, and one of them has to be the kidnapper, and she's trying to figure out who that is and what's going on. You can't really trust anyone. She's really battling her own like self and emotions to figure out, okay, I need to save this child. Like, I'm gonna do this, even though I have no idea how. But I'm gonna have to try because I can't just leave. There's no cell service. There is like a line of hope because at dawn, the like snow patrol tractor people are gonna come and clear the roads. But these 4 people plus this girl in the van are stuck in this rest area, and it's just nail biting, heart racing, super intense. I was genuinely scared and I didn't want to read this book at night because it freaked me out, but it was a really good thriller. From all the thrillers I read this year, this one thrilled me the most. So that's why I loved it. Up next, I have 2 very surprising favorites for me. The first one is Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty. This is a very popular book and a very popular TV show on HBO. I didn't think I was gonna love this book as much as I did, but it genuinely made me laugh out loud. It was very gripping. Again, it got me in and I didn't want to put it down. This book follows a large cast of different female characters. They all live in a small town in Australia. Someone dies at some school event in the beginning and you're trying to figure out who that is and the events leading up to that. And it's a story of female friendship, family drama, unlikely friendship. It has a lot of tough topics as well, like domestic abuse and rape, and also like infidelity and just sad things that happen in relationships. But this book dealt with all of those in a very interesting and captivating way, and I was very drawn into the story and attached to these characters, and I absolutely loved it. I watched the TV series after reading the book, and I thought the book was way better, but that's usually the case. Another really surprising favorite for me this year was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is also a very hyped book and a lot of people's favorites, and I can totally see why. I thought this book was so interesting and very different than a lot of books that I've read, and it deals with a pandemic, post-apocalyptic vibes, which is sort of the theme of the year for us in 2020 here, so it felt very fitting. But it follows also a lot of different characters, several different timelines, and you're sort of piecing the story together. It follows a post-pandemic world. Civilization has fallen apart, and it's these different stories that connect over time, and the main thread is this traveling group of entertainers or performers. They perform different Shakespeare plays and concerts to these little towns that have formed since the pandemic, and they need to get to this supposedly safe haven airport place, which you're trying to figure out in the book if that's a safe place to go. And there's like a weird cult leader, and it's kind of whimsical and magical and just very interesting. I thought it was well written and a beautiful story. I'm very excited to pick up The Glass Hotel, which is her other book, and I want to read that one as well because I really enjoyed her writing. Speaking of fantasy and magic and whimsy, Harry Potter. Harry Potter is a 5 out of 5 for me all the time. This isn't my first time reading these books, but I want to include them because they were a very prominent reading experience in the year of 2020 for me. Although we physically didn't read these books, we listened to the audiobooks on our phone, but I just wanted to include them here. My husband has never read or listened to them, and we made our way through all of the books this year. The ones that are narrated by Jim Dale, they're incredible, and I highly recommend if you haven't listened to them before as an audiobook. They're just top notch, and they're the audiobooks that got me into listening to audiobooks. So really incredible. My favorites I will mention are Prisoner of Azkaban. Love this book and the movie. The Half-Blood Prince and The Deathly Hallows. I think those are my top 3 out of all of them, although I do just love them all. I think my least favorite is Order of the Phoenix because Umbridge is the worst and Harry's annoying and everyone's just annoying, but I understand why that book is needed for the story, and of course it's just all great. It's all amazing. And my last category, I have 3 books left, which are all nonfiction. The first one is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. I read this book with my husband. We read a chapter or 2 before bed. It took us a few months, but that was a really fun and enjoyable reading experience to read it together and learn about this topic. This is a fantastic book. The author breaks down complicated sleep sleep studies and the science of sleep in a very digestible way, and it was very easy to understand. And I will say this book is definitely one of the most impactful books of the year for me, and also the one that I talk about the most with other people. And my husband and I quote this book the most. We quote random stuff in here that we read or highlighted about why sleep's important. And hey, did you know that if you stay up for more than 16 hours, that's the same as being intoxicated when you sit behind the wheel of a car and start driving? So don't ever drive if you're sleep deprived. That's a big one. I think this is also definitely a reread kind of book. I want to come back to it. I think this is the kind of book that's a great resource to just have on your bookshelf. But yeah, this one was so good. Up next, I have Educated by Tara Westover. I read this book towards the beginning of the year and I absolutely loved it. This is a nonfiction memoir of a woman who grows up in a small town and her family doesn't believe in education and has some weird ideas about religion and the government. And it's a bit of like a survivalist family, and this follows her story breaking away from that, pursuing schooling and education, and also just how tough it is to separate yourself from your family and do and pursue your own thing. And I thought that it was just incredibly written and a beautiful story, a very sad story, but also hopeful, and I absolutely loved it. Oh, so good. And finally, another favorite this year was Becoming by Michelle Obama. I mean, it's not surprising. This is on a lot of people's favorites list. It's a beautifully written and a wonderful story, and she's just an incredible woman. I have so much respect for her. I listened to the audiobook and I absolutely loved it. This book made me cry several times, and I don't even know why. I just felt very empowered and inspired. It was such a good listen and such a good book. All right, those are all my favorite books of the year. I'm so excited for 2021 and more reading and more good books. If you have any recommendations, leave them below. I'm always looking for new books to read. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in another one. Happy New Year! Bye!